Good morning. It is day 8 of the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs. So let's get up to date as to what has happened thus far today. Prosecutors have indicated that Kid Cudi will not be taking the witness stand today. Okay? The special agent from yesterday returned to the stand. Special Agent Gerard Gannon of the Homeland Security Investigations Unit, in charge of the March 2024 search of Combs's Miami Beach home, was on the stand to resume testimony under direct examination. Let's see. Now, Gannon, while on the stand during his testimony, the jury was allowed to see photographs of a sex toy and a pair of red high-heeled shoes that Gannon says were found in the master bedroom closet of the home. He pulled the shoes out that he says were found in the closet and displayed them for the jury. About 18 pair of platform high heels were recovered from the home, according to his testimony. 3 cell phones were found inside a Balenciaga boot inside the closet, according to his testimony, and another cell phone was seized from a bedroom within the house, according to a stipulation that was read in court. Keep in mind, his testimony began yesterday regarding other items that he says were found in the closet, including personal lubricant, lingerie, and upper and lower receivers of AR-15s. Gannon also said the search was tied to a human trafficking investigation, and he was assigned to HSI's human trafficking group at the time. A Gucci bag, according to testimony, was found in the closet, and it contained an assortment of pills, white powder, and a crystal rock-like substance, a plastic straw, a $100 bill, and other items, according to Special Agent Gannon. The powder and residue from the straw tested positive for cocaine and ketamine, according to a stipulation that was read in the court. Residue from the $100 bill tested positive for cocaine and ketamine, also from the stipulation that was read in court. A bottle of eye drops was found in the bag, and it tested positive for MDMA and ketamine. This was also per the stipulation. Various tablets tested positive for MDMA, also according to the stipulation, and other tablets tested positive for alprazolam, which is an active ingredient in Xanax. Some tested positive for ketamine and alprazolam, and others tested positive for methamphetamine and MDMA, according to the stipulation. The jury saw more photos that were taken during the March 2024 search of Combs's Miami Beach home. The images shown in court included photos of boxes filled with bottles of baby oil and personal lubricant that were recovered from a closet in the home. 25 bottles of baby oil and 31 bottles of lubricant were found in the closet. Gannon was on the ground during the search. In the master bedroom, agents found a box adorned with a gold plate bearing the inscription Puffy, according to Gannon's testimony. MDMA and capsules containing the active ingredient in mushrooms were recovered from inside the box. This is what the court was told. The jury also saw photos of narcotics and the box in the bathroom. A loaded .45 caliber handgun was recovered from a suitcase in a room in the property's guest house. Special Agent Gannon identified the room as a guard shack. On the witness stand, Gannon held up an evidence bag filled with the bullets recovered from the firearm. And from that, the defense team began its cross-examination of the special agent. We'll have more on that in part 2, which as always will be linked in the comments. Part 2. 6 people were at the home of Combs, the Miami Beach home, when Homeland Security investigators gained access and began searching. A music producer, a property manager, and other facilities personnel were put into handcuffs for law enforcement to identify and search. This is according to Gannon's testimony. The music producer was not identified by name. No weapons or paraphernalia were recovered on any of the people that were found in the home at the time. Defense attorney Tenny Garagos asked the Special Agent Gannon to confirm that the 2 AR-15 rifles were recovered from a closet in the master bedroom and that they were dismantled and not loaded when the investigators found them. Special Agent Gannon finished up his testimony. And then psychologist Don Hughes took to the stand. Don Hughes is a board-certified clinical and forensic psychologist. Some of you all may be familiar with her when she testified at the Johnny Depp trial. She is a very experienced expert witness. She is the 11th witness that's been called by the prosecution in this case, and she's being questioned by Assistant U.S. Attorney Mitzi Steiner. On the stand, Hughes said her experience is unique because she's almost always had training in trauma. She said she started working as a domestic violence survivors program in graduate school. Judge Aaron Subramaniam qualified Hughes as an expert witness in clinical and forensic psychology specializing in trauma and traumatic stress. It's routine for an expert witness to answer questions about their credentials and experience before they are qualified at trial. Hughes is expected to testify about why victims in general remain in relationships, how victims cope in such relationships, and why they engage in delayed disclosure and the effect of trauma on memory. Subramaniam had previously ruled Hughes cannot testify about certain topics, including the idea of coercive control, nor can she speak to the credibility of accusers in this case. Very important. Now, Hughes has testified as a blind expert. She will provide the jury with some information about domestic violence, rape, sexual assault, and traumatic stress. She testified she has not assessed any of the victims or witnesses in this case, nor has she interviewed anyone connected with the case. She said she has seen the press coverage of the case, but she has not been following what's been happening in court. She testified that she's been paid $600 an hour for her work and $6,000 a day for testimony in court. Hughes testified that it's very common for victims to stay in abusive relationships. She explained that perpetrators often use various abusive methods beyond just physical violence to make victims feel trapped. It's about power and control that the abuser has over them, according to her testimony. Sexual abuse is a very private harm, which can make it difficult for a victim to seek help to leave an abusive relationship. This is according to Don Hughes. She also said, and I quote, they experience a tremendous amount of shame, humiliation, degradation. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to think about it in their own brain. We'll have more in part 3, which will be linked in the part 3. Psychologist Don Hughes testified that victims' financial dependence on an abuser plays a very important role in their decision to stay in an abusive situation. She explained that resources are necessary for a victim to leave the relationship, and when an abuser controls their general living expenses, it's hard for the victim to see a way out. The abuser is sabotaging a victim's ability to have independence. How are you to leave if you don't have access to those tangible resources? Hughes testified. Abusive relationships often have love and kindness in them in addition to the abuse, clinical and forensic psychologist Don Hughes testified. The victim wants that. They want that back. So when that is shown to the victim, that's very reinforcing, according to her testimony. She also said that a trauma bond is when someone is attached to their partner in spite of the violence and abuse. The trauma bond can make a victim unwilling to leave the relationship. Hughes also stated that it often takes multiple attempts for victims to leave abusive relationships. She stated, and I quote, "There's a pattern of returning and reconciliation and then returning again." She said victims could want to come back to the good version of their partner that they still do love. She also said they also return because the abuse is still continuing outside of the relationship. And I think these things people really need to mull over today, because there has been a lot of victim blaming, not just with this case, but regarding a lot of things. And a lot of people just flat out lying to themselves as a manner of not dealing with the abuse that they are currently going through. You can reach out. As the abuse becomes more severe, so do the coping mechanisms, Hughes explained. A victim's coping mechanism usually exists within the confines of the relationship. Sometimes this includes fighting back, but the most common coping mechanism is trying to work things out with the abusive partner to stop the abuse and preserve the love. Hughes also discussed both passive and active self-defense during her testimony under questioning by the prosecution. Passive self-defense includes actions that are the least provoking as possible to get the violent episode to stop, including blocking punches or curling up on the floor. Active self-defense includes throwing objects or hitting back against abuse. Victims use active self-defense to have some way of standing up for themselves, although in many cases that usually results in more severe injury to themselves. Hughes also stated that it's common for victims in abusive relationships to use substances to numb themselves. Victims will often take drugs or drink before they see their partner, preventatively to ward off other psychological pain that may be to come. It's uncommon for victims to talk about the abuse around the time that it occurs. Many victims will wait months, even years, before telling what happened to them, per the testimony of Hughes. She explained that a victim is usually more willing to discuss abuse from a stranger than from a partner. The closer the relationship to the perpetrator, the less likely you're going to disclose. And just to put this caveat in here, it's because so many people assume that if you're close to somebody, it's going to be easier to get away. It's the opposite. Hughes also stated that trauma affects memory. Victims retain core details while peripheral ones may fade. This is what we know thus far. When additional updates become available, I will bring them to you. But as always, let me know your thoughts in the comments.